I'm going to show you how to set up commands in Slack so you can trigger an automation that updates a Google Sheet by just typing a message in Slack. Okay, so I've got my Slack open, and the tool that I've built today is for keeping track of when employees clock in and clock out. So I'm going to type in /clockin, and that is the Slack command that I made. So we type in clockin, hit enter, it tells me I've clocked in, it's 8:05 a.m. Now I go over to my spreadsheet, and you can see here, 10:325, 8:05 a.m., the user clocked in. So that is what I'm going to be showing you how to set up today. All right, so who can benefit from these kind of automations in Slack? Well, it could benefit you if you're a small business owner and you want to streamline certain processes for your team to make it easier for them. It could also help if you're a project manager. For example, you can make an automation that allows people to type in /task, and that would be a way for them to keep track of which tasks they've completed. And again, you could feed that into a spreadsheet. You could have it send automated messages to people. So there's lots of possibilities here. Another example would be if you are in marketing or sales, maybe you want to keep track of data from ad campaigns. And instead of you having to open up your Facebook ads dashboard, you could just type in /retrieve, and it would pull the data and send you a message in Slack. So in this video, you're going to learn a few things. You're going to learn how to set up commands in Slack. You're going to learn how to update a Google Sheet from n8n. You're going to learn how to make custom HTTP requests, because sometimes these APIs like Google Sheets, if you use it in n8n, those default nodes they have don't always have the complete functionalities. So we have to make custom HTTP requests to get that functionality. And finally, you're going to learn how and why you should use code nodes in n8n. All right, so now let's talk about our objective and the automation that we're going to build today. We're going to set up two commands. One is going to be the clock in, and the other is going to be clock out. And the idea here is very simple. When somebody comes to work or starts working, they type in that command, and then that goes to the spreadsheet so that the manager can see when people are clocking in and clocking out, and they can see how many hours they're working. So we want to set up those commands, and we want to be able to see who clocked in. We want to see what time they clocked in. And another feature we can explore is creating individual sheets for each user, so that instead of you having this one big spreadsheet with all the users, you have it divided into individual users. How to set up commands in Slack. To set up your command in Slack, start out by typing in Slack API into Google. Click on the first link, and you're going to want to create a new app. You can do from scratch. Let's just call this attendance tracker. Now you're going to go to the left sidebar and look for /commands. Create a new command. We can call this clockin. And now it asks us for a request URL. So this request URL, we're going to set this up in n8n, which is an automation tool. So go here to your n8n, make a new workflow, and you're going to add a webhook node. We can rename this clockin, and you're going to grab this URL here, and you're going to paste that into the request URL field. Description, you can put clockin, and now we can hit save. And also make sure that you install the app that you just created into your Slack workspace. So to do that, go to the left sidebar and hit install app and install it into your workspace. Hit allow. Okay. All right, so now that we've set up our Slack command and we started to set up our n8n workflow, we want to actually do kind of a test and see if we can get data to come into our automation when we run the command. So the way we're going to get that sample data is, let's open up our node, and now let's hit listen for test events. So now our app is listening for requests. Now let's open up Slack and let's try running our command. Okay, so you can see it failed with this error, and I think the reason why is because if you look here, the HTTP method is get. So the Slack request, it actually has to be coming in as a post request. So we're going to change this to post, listen for test event, and let's try again. Okay, now it says message workflow was started. And now we look here in n8n, and we can see all this data just came in. And this was the request that Slack sent to our automation. And the cool thing is you can see a bunch of data, for example, the user ID, the username of the person who launched the command. You can see the command was, you can see any text that was provided. So now we have a very good starting point for building our automation. Now we're going to connect Google Sheets to our automation. So we can hit this plus here. We're going to add a Google Sheets node, and let's do append row in sheet. Now you're going to have to set up your credentials. There's plenty of tutorials on how to do that. But once you've got that set up, you can choose your document, and I'm going to choose this one, attendance tracker, choose a sheet, and now it's going to ask you to map the columns. So let's actually add some columns to my sheet. Let's do the time, let's do date, time, and then the action. So the action will be either clocking in or clocking out. And actually, let's also add a username column. All right, so we've got our columns set up. Now we want to actually update this Google Sheet based on the data we got from the clockin command. So as you can see here, n8n makes it very easy because it shows you the output of the previous node as you're configuring the current node. So if I scroll down here, I can see this username, and I can literally just drag it over here and drop it into the username field that will update the Google Sheet. Now for the date, we want to get the current time and the current date. But a really easy hack you can do here is you can just type in an expression. You can do new date like that, and it's gonna put in the current date and time. And then the action, it's gonna be /clockin because that's what the user did. And actually, we can actually do it like this. We can drag over the command field and just drop it in there. Okay, so now that we set up a super simple automation, when the user types in the clockin command, it's gonna update the spreadsheet. So let's give it a trial run. I'm gonna hit execute workflow to make it active. And now let's see if it works. So as you can see, it was triggered. And let's check our spreadsheet now. Now we can see the username of the person who ran the command, the date, and the action they took, so typing in the clockin command. All right, so far, we've learned how to set up commands in Slack. We've learned how to update a Google Sheet from n8n, but we haven't yet learned how to do these custom HTTP requests that I was talking about. And to do that, we're gonna try to add another feature to this little app we're building, which is that we wanna have an individual sheet for each user. So if I'm Bob, I want to have a spreadsheet for Bob to see his clocking in and clocking out times. I want to have a different spreadsheet for Alice and be able to see the times that she clocks in and out. And to set that up, it's going to require us to do a custom HTTP request to the Google Sheets API. Because if you look in here, Google Sheets, these are the standard options that we have available. But in order to set up this feature where we have different sheets for each person, we actually need to be able to retrieve a list of all the sheets that currently exist. So to set up these different spreadsheets, let's kind of walk through the logic of how we're going to do that. So let's make a new page here. So there's really two cases. And the first one is if the sheet already exists, well, in that case, we can just update the sheet, right, with the command that they just ran. But the thing is, there's another case, which is if the sheet does not exist, then there's an additional step, which is we need to create that new sheet for the user, and then we can update the sheet. So it's really helpful to just kind of map out your logic beforehand before you actually go in and create the automation. So we know that there's these two cases because we want to have, like I said, we want to have individual sheets for each employee. But if that sheet has not yet been created, we need to create it first before we can update it, obviously. So let's go and start building that out. And this is actually where it becomes necessary for us to set up that custom HTTP request. And I'm going to show you why. Because if we type in Google Sheets here, and you can see these are the available nodes we have. So you can see create sheet, you can see append row. But the problem is we don't see any node here that lists all the sheets. And listing all the sheets is going to be necessary if we're going to implement our logic where we check to see if a sheet exists, right? Because how do you know if a sheet exists? Well, first you need the list of all the sheets, then you can go through that list and see, okay, is this the sheet we're looking for? No? Next. So that's how you would determine if a sheet currently exists. But as you can see, there's no node that does that for us. So that's why we have to create a custom HTTP request. And we're going to do this by typing in HTTP request, and let's put this into our automation. So for our request, we're going to be hitting the Google Sheets API. Because if you think about it, this right here, this Google Sheets node, it's actually an HTTP request going to an API. But what n8n has done is they've wrapped it into this nice little interface, so it's very convenient for you. But if we want those additional functionalities, we're going to have to do a custom request. So for our request, it's going to ask us for the URL, and this is going to be a Google API endpoint. Now, instead of me going through the docs and trying to find the exact endpoint I need, I'm just going to use ChatGPT. So I can say, please create an HTTP request to the Google Sheets API that retrieves a list of all the sheets in a Google Sheet. All right, and as you can see, it gave us the request. So I'm just going to copy this URL here, paste it. And now you see here, this part, it says spreadsheet ID. So the way you get the spreadsheet ID is you look in the URL, and it's going to be the part after the d/ and before the /edit. So you can just copy that and paste that into the spreadsheet ID. Now for authentication, you can use the credentials you set up in n8n for your Google Sheets. And now let's see if this works. Okay, so we retrieved our data, and you can see it's a list of the sheets we have. So right now we only have one sheet, but let's add a new sheet and see if it gets registered. So let's add a bunch of them actually. So we got 4 sheets now. Let's run this request again. And you can see it's a list of all the sheets. Okay, so now that we have that list, we can go through that list and try to find if the sheet we're looking for already exists. And now this is the part we're going to learn how to use these code nodes in n8n. So we're going to hit plus and add a new code node. We're going to hook this up to our request. And now you can see on the left we have the inputs to this node, which is that list of sheets. Now, instead of us actually writing the code, this is the trick, is again, you can use ChatGPT to write the code for you. So I can say, please write an n8n code node that receives this list of sheets and determines whether or not a specific sheet exists. Okay, so it generated our code. Let's hit copy and paste that in. And let's just see if it works.